One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. And if so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, "Give this man your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all your fellow guests. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, although they cannot repay you. You will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, an example of humility is the name of this sermon. And as we just heard, Jesus gave us several examples of what humility really is. But it's 2019? And we still suffer with trying to define what that humility thing is. In the news, we've heard the following words as they pertain to individuals' cultural mores, as in an indicator of where we came from and what is important to us. In other words, folks, our backgrounds teach us a lot about who we are and where we came from and what mom and daddy taught us and what granddaddy and grandma taught us and then what the world taught us. Maybe you went into the military. Maybe you came out a different person after that. Maybe you went to college. Maybe you got married. And that taught you a little bit about life. But where you came from, I want you to hold that just in your head right here for a second. Because we hear a lot about this word, and I've said this before, this word called narcissism. It's defined as a personality disorder, and it comes from a Greek mythology from an extremely good-looking hunter who fell in love with himself. In other words, narcissism is an over-infatuation with one's own self. The character and nature of the late Jeffrey Epstein could possibly be an example of narcissism, psychopathic behavior, and that he possibly did not think about anyone else besides his own needs, and possibly the needs of those he was trying to manipulate. Those little girls, and I'm going to say little girls, those little girls' respect and dignity and humanness was not something that Epstein thought about when he did what he did. Now, as my grandmother used to say, so you think your stuff doesn't stink. That's narcissism. Well, most of us here today can say, well, I'm not a Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe not. None of us maybe have gone to that extreme. But have you ever been self-absorbed? Anybody here? Have you mistreated or disrespected someone in your life? You don't have to raise your hand. Have you ever been greedy, or have you ever treated someone with less respect and dignity than you would like to be treated? Have you ever been plain old rude? Most of us can answer that with a yes. And still, all of us who follow Jesus Christ, there's a reminder that none of us here today or tomorrow are pure and righteous. We all must cry to God for divine mercy to cover our own failures and our own misjudgments. In our scripture today, Jesus is modeling to us how we are to walk in the world, and that is with humility. Humility is to have a modest view of one's own importance. And sometimes it takes a lifetime of work to do that. Or an ordeal that taught you humility. Something you went through. But for Christians, for Presbyterians, it's a continuous emphasis on godliness. On Proverbs, it says this, Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And every day, I don't know about you, but every day, I say the prayer, the Lord's Prayer. Every day. And it reminds me that I am nobody but the Lord's. Now, I'm not saying that this humility thing means that we gotta, not take care of ourselves and not take care of our families. That would be dismissive. What I'm saying is humility is something that we usually learn throughout our lives. You ever see a 2-year-old? All they say is, no, mine. No, mine. You just want to, by the end of the day. Okay, Lord, no. Mine, and snatching everything away. But they have to learn to share. What is that word? Share. To get along with each other. Right? And when a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old comes up to you and says, mine, and snatches something, you kind of take the hand and say, wait a minute, that we can share. So sometimes if we are, I'll just say Epstein-like, if we only have so much in our lives that we can just do whatever we want to do in life to whomever, and we call ourselves Christian, we have to rethink those things. They talked a little bit this week about sitting with yourself. How many people take time just to sit with yourself during a week? And I mean sit with yourself. All the junk that you've been doing, you just sit with yourself and think about that. Americans are so busy doing that we rarely sit with ourselves. But if we did it every day, we'd think about things that we didn't do real well. Maybe we snapped at somebody. Doesn't matter what it is. Now, regardless of who we are or what side of the road we stand on, there are some universal no-nos. And that is that we protect our young, right? We protect each other. And today, we're going to ring a bell. I forgot to do it because we're going to do it during prayer. Because as you know, 5 people in Texas' lives were taken. And 21 people were injured so far that I know of. We're not taking care of ourselves. We're not giving an example of humility in our lives. Now, Jesus is saying, listen, instead of thinking about me all the time, yourselves all the time, think about where you want to sit. Now, I know most Presbyterians like to sit in the back. Yep. That's why we got rid of 3 rows in the back, so you can sit a little further. But you all look so good where you are, because I can see you now. And you're closer together as a community. You can feel each other. Now, somebody told me that I was a little crazy, but I probably think they're true. You ever walked into a room and you feel something? Somebody's sick. Something's wrong. What's going on? Some of us have feelers out there. And sometimes we gotta turn them off. But most of the time they're on because that's your gift. That's what God has given you. So sometimes you gotta jump into that gift and say, okay, Lord, you can use me. Now, for some people, those individuals that were in Texas, some people were helping other people to hide. Some people didn't even know that they were shot or wounded. And other people helped them. That's what being humble is about, is helping one another. Now you all, didn't Bob just tell me, you all are tough. Y'all have been through a few things. Maybe some things you don't want to talk about. But those things that you have been through have made you a better or worse person, depending on how you look at it. Most of you sitting here, that stuff that is crazy has made you a better person. So, you sit here aged like wonderful wine. You are ready. You are soldiers for Christ. You taste good. You are aged wine. You can help somebody else out there that's younger and inexperienced to maybe make the right turn. You know, one of the things that was done for these girls is those girls were recruited by other girls. That was almost, they wouldn't have been recruited if they were recruited by older people, right? They were recruited by younger people. And unfortunately, nobody got a hold of these young girls to say, baby, that's not good. Don't do it. It's not a good decision. Now I'm going to tell you a story. You might be able to look it up. When I was about 15, 14, I was asked to do a modeling for Ebony magazine. Anybody remember that? Yeah. Because my mother's girlfriend was an administrator for Ebony, and so I just did a makeup thing. I never wore makeup in my life until then. So it was like a before and an after thing, right? So they take a picture of you before, and then they take a picture of you after it, and there's my picture. I was in 8th grade. Oh my goodness. And my father went to the, remember newsstands? And bought up all the Ebony stack. There's my baby girl in Ebony. And I started to think, well, maybe, and it was good money. I put it in my college fund. I think it was like $100, $200. Back then, that was good money, right? Well, when I started reading about that man and his girls and what he was offering them, that $200 hit right here. Because I remember my mother saying, babe, I know this might feel good, but there's more to this thing. You don't want to be the kind of woman that needs to be stroked because of how she looks. Well, at 12 and 13, I'm like, well, why not? You want to be known as the type of woman that thinks, so you can get out there and get any job that you want, and you don't have to use this to get it, because if you use this to get it, you pay a very high price. Now, I wished that somebody had said something to those young ladies, those young girls. Baby, you don't need this. You just need to know who you are. Give yourself a chance. Get educated. Do what you need to do. Nobody did that for them. But that didn't mean that some of them didn't grow up to be fighters and change their life. You see, Jesus says that we are to take care of each other, that we are to walk with humbleness in our heart, that we are not to take the first seat at the dinner table. And you know what is interesting? As a chaplain, and I come into somebody's house and they want me to sit, I always look for where the Mr. and Mrs. sit. And I'll say, oh, are these your chairs? Usually there's, you know, those big comfy chairs with the feet that go up. Anybody got one of those? You know, lounge chair, your chair, and you know nobody's gonna sit in it because it has your hiney print in it. Come on now, nobody has a chair like that? Raise your hand if you have a chair like that. Okay, thank you. I always look for that chair because that is the king or queen's chair. That is the special chair. I look for a wooden chair that I can pull up, or even a folding chair I can pull up. Because my job there is not to be king or queen. My job is to listen. Now there is a church, and this is amazing. This church is called Wesley Memorial United Methodist Church, and they have a woman there, Maria. And Maria is an undocumented Guatemalan that has children who are Americans. Now, of course, things change in the United States. She was supposed to be deported. She took refuge in a church. She has 3 American children, and she does not want to leave her children. She went to her church. The church said that they would help her. And what was interesting is the pastor said, we're not just going to help you for 3 months, we're going to help you for how long it takes. So they're trying to go through the system with the attorneys to get her documented, to get her legal. But in the process, she is living at the church. Now, I thought that this Wesley church was this big, fancy church, had lots of money. They just got a few folks, about 100 or so, that go and do her shopping. They take her children to go get school clothes. They help them with their homework. She can walk like right here, and she can see her kids get on the bus, but she can't go to the bus stop. She will be arrested. These people have humbled themselves for this woman. Now, an example of humility? I'd say yeah. And does it, the pastor said, listen, if you've ever taken care of somebody, anybody taken care of somebody? It is exhausting. If you have ever been a caregiver, it is exhausting. And somebody say amen.
Amen.
If you take care of someone, now this is an able-bodied woman, but she cannot go past a certain point on the church property. So you have to, everybody has to participate and take care of her. That means food every day. That means laundry. That means going to get her kids. That means all kinds of stuff. Every day. It's exhausting. But our job, ladies and gentlemen, as the hurricane comes, it humbles us. As Jesus said, which chair are we going to take? How are you going to humble yourself this week? What is it that you're going to do? Now I know my voice is calm, so some of you are falling asleep. But wake up! Wake up, because we have a job to do. We are the example of humility as human beings. And so when we are looking and reading this book, it is not just because it's called the good book. It is because it actually teaches us something to do. It says, friend, give this man your seat. Give the man your seat. Because that is what we are to do. Amen?
Amen.
Amen?